The trash bags were pink. That was the detail Naomi would remember years later when she told this story. Not the rain that soaked through her scrubs. Not the way her hands shook as she tried her key in the lock that no longer recognized her. Not even the face of the woman watching from the living room window, her husband's mistress, wearing the silk robe Naomi had received last Christmas. No. She remembered that the trash bags containing 8 years of her life were pink. The locks are changed. Patricia stood on the porch, arms crossed over her chest, her face twisted in that expression of disgust Naomi had seen so many times before. Trevor's mother had never hidden her disdain for the woman her son married. "You're not welcome here anymore." Naomi's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst through her rib cage. "This is my house. I've been paying the mortgage for 3 years while Trevor got his business started." "Was your house," Patricia corrected, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Trevor's name is on the deed. You were just living here. And now you're not." The front door opened. Trevor stepped out, and Naomi searched his face for some sign of the man she'd married. The man she'd worked double shifts for. The man whose dreams she'd funded while putting her own on hold. She found nothing. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Naomi." His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was discussing the weather. "Sienna and I are together now. We're having a baby. It's time for you to move on." The world tilted. Baby. They were having a baby. "I gave you everything." Naomi's voice cracked, and she hated herself for it. "I worked myself to exhaustion so you could build your business. I gave up my own dreams." "You were suffocating me," Trevor interrupted, his face hardening. "Always tired, always working, never any fun anymore. Sienna makes me happy. She doesn't nag about bills or act like some kind of martyr." Patricia nodded, a cruel smile playing at her lips. "My son deserves better than a woman who comes home smelling like a hospital every night. Sienna is educated, refined. She comes from a good family." "I'm a nurse," Naomi whispered. "I save lives." "You're a burden," Patricia snapped. "Now take your bags and go. We've been generous enough to pack your things. Though honestly, most of it was garbage anyway. Trevor's lawyer will be in touch about the divorce." Naomi looked at the pile of pink trash bags on the lawn, already soaking through in the rain. Her clothes, her books, the photographs from her childhood. Her grandmother's quilt. Everything that mattered to her stuffed into trash bags like garbage. "My car," she managed. "The Toyota. I've been making those payments." Trevor pulled keys from his pocket and tossed them at her feet. "It's in the driveway. Consider it a parting gift. Now leave before I call the police for trespassing." Through the window, Naomi could see Sienna walking through the living room, her living room, touching the furniture Naomi had saved for months to buy. The woman was younger, thinner, with long straight hair and pale skin that had never known a hard day's work. She moved through the space like she owned it. Because now she did. "You'll regret this," Naomi said quietly, not as a threat but as a statement of fact. Her hands had stopped shaking. Something cold and hard was forming in her chest, replacing the shattered pieces of her heart. Trevor laughed. "I really don't think so. Goodbye, Naomi." They went back inside, closing the door on 8 years of marriage like it meant nothing. Through the window, Naomi saw Sienna wrap her arms around Trevor's neck, saw him smile in a way he hadn't smiled at her in years. The rain came harder. Naomi stood there for a long moment, staring at the house she'd bled for, the life she'd built that had been stolen in an afternoon. Then she began loading the pink trash bags into her Toyota, one after another, until the back seat and trunk were full. Some bags she had to leave on the curb. There wasn't room for everything. That felt appropriate somehow. She was leaving parts of herself behind. As she pulled away from the curb, Naomi looked in the rearview mirror one last time. Patricia stood at the window, watching with satisfaction as Naomi's car disappeared down the street. Trevor didn't even bother to look. Naomi drove without knowing where she was going. Her phone had 17 missed calls, friends probably, wondering why she hadn't shown up to their planned dinner. She couldn't face them. Couldn't face the pity in their eyes when they learned her husband had replaced her like a broken appliance. At a red light, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. Her eyes were red but dry. She'd cried herself empty in the car, sobbing so hard she'd had to pull over twice. Now there was just exhaustion and something else. Something that felt dangerous. The light turned green and Naomi pressed the gas, driving forward into a future she couldn't yet imagine. Behind her, everything she'd known lay in ruins. Ahead, in the darkness and rain, something was waiting to be born. The parking lot of the 24-hour grocery store became Naomi's bedroom. She tried her sister first. Danielle had opened the door, taken one look at Naomi's tear-stained face and the car packed with trash bags, and sighed in that particular way that said Naomi was once again proving to be a disappointment. "I told you Trevor was no good," Danielle had said, not even stepping aside to let Naomi in from the cold. "But you never listen. You always think you know better. Can I just stay for a few nights?" Naomi had asked, hating the begging tone in her voice. "Until I figure things out? I've got Gerald's kids this week. No room." Danielle had started to close the door, then paused. "Besides, you need to learn to stand on your own feet. You're always looking for someone to rescue you. Maybe this is the wake-up call you need." The door had shut with a soft click that echoed louder than a slam. So Naomi had driven to the grocery store, parked in the far corner under a broken light, and tried to sleep in her car. The seats didn't recline far enough. Her neck cramped within an hour. Every sound made her jump: footsteps, car doors, the distant wail of sirens. She checked her bank account on her phone. $1,300. That was everything she had. The joint account she'd been depositing her paychecks into? Emptied. Trevor had cleaned it out, leaving exactly $1 so it wouldn't show as fraud. Her credit cards? Maxed out. She'd been paying down Trevor's business debts for 2 years, always promising herself they'd catch up soon. That things would get better once his company took off. $1,300 stood between her and complete destitution. Naomi closed her eyes and tried to remember how she'd gotten here. Once upon a time, she'd been different. She'd had dreams of her own. Big dreams. She'd been accepted to a real estate development program at the university. She'd wanted to build things, create communities, transform neglected properties into homes. Her grandmother had owned a small apartment building, and Naomi had loved helping manage it as a teenager. She'd loved seeing the numbers work, finding creative solutions to problems, envisioning what a space could become. Then she'd met Trevor at a friend's birthday party. He'd been charming, attentive, full of big plans. He was going to start a consulting firm. He just needed time to get it off the ground. Would she mind postponing school? Just for a year or two. "We're a team," he'd said, holding her hands and looking into her eyes with such sincerity she'd believed him. "Once my business takes off, you can do whatever you want. I'll support your dreams the way you're supporting mine." She deferred her admission. Taken the nursing program instead because it was shorter, cheaper, and would bring in steady money. She told herself it was temporary. That she was investing in their future. 8 years later, Trevor's business was struggling along, barely breaking even. And her acceptance to the development program had long since expired. A knock on the window made Naomi jump. A security guard stood outside, shining a flashlight into the car. "You can't sleep here," he said, his voice muffled through the glass. Naomi rolled down the window. "Please. I just need a few hours. I'll leave before morning." "No sleeping in vehicles. Store policy. You need to move along." She wanted to scream at him. To explain that she had nowhere else to go. That her husband and his mother had thrown her away like trash. That her own sister had turned her away. That she was so tired her bones ached. Instead, she started the car. She drove to a different parking lot. A shopping center this time, closed for the night. She parked between 2 larger vehicles, trying to make her car less visible. She locked the doors, reclined the seat as far as it would go, and pulled her grandmother's quilt over herself. The quilt smelled like home. Like the woman who'd raised her after her parents died. Like better times. Naomi let herself cry again, quietly this time, her face buried in the fabric her grandmother had stitched by hand. She cried for the girl who'd had dreams. For the woman who'd abandoned them. For the wife who'd been discarded. For the future that looked so dark she couldn't see a way forward. Eventually, exhaustion claimed her. She slept in fits and starts, waking every time a car passed or a door slammed somewhere in the distance. When morning came, gray and cold, Naomi sat up and looked at herself in the mirror. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were swollen. She looked like someone who'd spent the night in a car. Because she had. She used the public restroom at a gas station to wash her face and brush her teeth. A woman at the next sink gave her a pitying look and hurried out. Naomi stared at herself in the mirror, at the stranger looking back at her. "This is not how your story ends," she said out loud, her voice echoing in the empty bathroom. "This is not who you are." But she wasn't sure she believed it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Trevor's lawyer. Papers would be ready in 3 days. She'd need to sign. The house was in Trevor's name only. She was entitled to nothing. Naomi deleted the message and opened her phone's browser. She searched for rooms to rent, cheap apartments, anywhere she could afford with $1,300 and a nursing salary that suddenly seemed very small. The prices made her stomach turn. Even the worst places wanted first month, last month, and a security deposit. She'd be broke before she signed a lease. Another search. Women's shelters. Her pride screamed against it, but pride didn't keep you warm at night. Pride didn't give you an address for your mail. Before she could talk herself out of it, Naomi called the closest shelter. A kind voice answered, explained they had space, gave her directions. Said she could come by that afternoon for intake. Naomi sat in her car in the gas station parking lot, staring at the address she'd written on a receipt. This was her life now. A nursing degree, years of hard work, and she was about to check into a homeless shelter. But it was better than her car. Better than nothing. She worked her shift at the hospital, moving through the motions automatically. Her coworkers asked if she was feeling okay. She smiled and said she was fine. Just tired. They believed her because they wanted to. During her lunch break, she sat in her car and opened the real estate listings again. Not to look for places to rent. To look at properties for sale. Fix and flips. Investment opportunities. The dream she'd buried. She zoomed in on a small house listed at $50,000. It needed work. The photos showed peeling paint, overgrown yard, outdated everything. But she could see past all that. She could see what it could be. With the right renovation, that house could sell for $90,000. Maybe more. $40,000 in profit, minus renovation costs. Maybe $25,000 net. $25,000 would change everything. But she didn't have $50,000. She had $1,300. Naomi closed the listing and finished her sandwich. It tasted like cardboard. Everything did now. That evening she checked into the shelter. The room was small, shared with 3 other women. But it had a bed. A real bed with clean sheets. She had a locker for her things. Access to showers. 3 meals a day. She lay in bed that night, listening to the sounds of other women breathing in the darkness. Women who'd ended up here through 1,000 different paths. Some running from violence. Some running from addiction. Some, like her, just running from lives that had fallen apart. Tomorrow she'd figure out her next step. Tomorrow she'd start building something from nothing. But tonight she let herself feel the full weight of how far she'd fallen. And beneath that weight, something hard and unyielding began to form. Naomi stood in front of the bathroom mirror at the shelter, looking at her reflection with fresh eyes. 3 weeks had passed since that night in the rain. 3 weeks of working shifts at the hospital, eating meals in the shelter cafeteria, and pretending everything was fine. But nothing was fine. And she was done pretending. The anger had come slowly at first, like a match catching in damp wood. Now it burned steady and hot. Not the wild, destructive kind of anger. The focused kind. The kind that built things. She thought about Trevor every day. About how he'd looked at her like she was nothing. About Patricia's satisfied smile. About Sienna in her robe in her house, living her life. And then she'd stopped thinking about them and started thinking about herself. Who am I without him? She'd asked her reflection one morning. The answer surprised her. She was the granddaughter of a woman who'd built an apartment building from nothing. She was someone who'd been accepted to a competitive development program. She was smart, capable, and stronger than she'd ever given herself credit for. Trevor hadn't made her. She'd made herself smaller to fit into his life. Now she was going to rebuild. Bigger than before. Naomi had spent the past week researching every real estate license requirement in the state. The exam cost $300. The prep course cost another $200. That was $500 of her precious remaining money. But it was an investment. Her grandmother had taught her that. Sometimes you had to spend money to make money. She signed up for the online prep course and studied every spare moment. During breaks at the hospital, she reviewed practice questions on her phone. Late at night in the shelter, while her roommates slept, she memorized regulations and laws. The shelter director, a woman named Sharon, noticed Naomi studying one evening. Real estate. Sharon asked, reading over Naomi's shoulder. Going to take the licensing exam next month? Naomi replied, not looking up from her notes. That's ambitious. Sharon sat down across from her. Most people who come through here, they're just trying to survive day to day. You're planning ahead. Surviving isn't enough. Naomi finally looked up. I'm done with just surviving. Sharon smiled, a real smile full of warmth. There's a small real estate office about 6 blocks from here. Henderson Properties. The owner, Grace Henderson, she's a friend of mine. I could give her a call if you want. They might need help with administrative stuff. I don't have my license yet. You don't need a license to answer phones and file paperwork. And you'd be around the business learning? Sometimes the best education is just being in the room where it happens. 2 days later, Naomi walked into Henderson Properties wearing the one professional outfit she'd salvaged from the pink trash bags. The office was small, just 4 agents and Grace Henderson herself, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Sharon says you're studying for your license," Grace said after the briefest of interviews. "Says you're living at the shelter but still showing up every day with your head held high." Naomi lifted her chin. "I'm rebuilding." "I like that. Rebuilding." Grace tapped her desk. "I can pay you $15 an hour, 25 hours a week. You'll answer phones, schedule showings, do filing. Basic administrative work. But you'll also sit in on our meetings. You'll hear how we talk to clients, how we structure deals. Consider it your real-world education." "When do I start?" "How about now?" Naomi worked her nursing shifts 3 days a week and spent 2 days at Henderson Properties. The money was tight, but she was saving every penny. She'd moved from the shared room to a tiny studio apartment, technically just one room with a hot plate and a bathroom the size of a closet. But it was hers. Nobody could kick her out. At Henderson Properties, Naomi absorbed everything. She listened to Grace negotiate with difficult clients. She watched how the other agents positioned properties, playing up strengths and managing weaknesses. She learned the language of real estate the way a good agent could paint a picture with words. "That house isn't small," she heard one agent say on the phone. "It's cozy and efficient. Perfect for someone who values quality over quantity." That house was definitely small. But the agent wasn't lying. Just reframing. Naomi studied hard for 6 weeks straight. She took practice tests until she could recite the answers in her sleep. She memorized formulas, regulations, ethics rules. She studied fair housing laws and contract language and disclosure requirements. The night before the exam, she couldn't sleep. She lay in her tiny studio, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. If she failed, she'd have to pay another $300 to retake it. Money she didn't have. But failing wasn't an option. She'd come too far to fail now. The exam was 3 hours long. Naomi read every question twice, checked every answer 3 times. When she finally submitted it, her hands were shaking. She had to wait 3 days for the results. 3 days of checking her email every 5 minutes. 3 days of doubt creeping in. 3 days of wondering if she'd made a mistake, if she'd misread something critical. On the 3rd day at 2:47 in the afternoon, the email came. "Congratulations. You have passed the real estate licensing exam." Naomi read it twice. 3 times. Then she stood up from the desk at Henderson Properties and walked very calmly to the bathroom, where she allowed herself exactly 2 minutes to cry tears of relief and joy. When she came back out, Grace was watching her with a knowing smile. "You passed." "I passed." "Good. Now the real work begins." Grace pulled out a thick folder. "I'm going to teach you everything I know. And when you're ready, when you've made your first sale, we'll talk about what comes next." Naomi dove into the work. She shadowed Grace to showings, watching how she walked through homes, how she answered questions, how she handled objections. She practiced her pitch in the mirror at home until the words felt natural. This home isn't just a house. It's an opportunity. It's a fresh start. It's where your next chapter begins. After a month of shadowing, Grace gave Naomi her first lead. A young couple looking for a starter home, budget around $200,000. Naomi met them at a coffee shop first. She listened to what they wanted: 3 bedrooms, good school district, move-in ready. Then she pulled up listings on her tablet and showed them 5 options. They chose to see 3. Naomi scheduled the showings for the following weekend. She spent the week researching everything about those 3 properties. The neighborhood comps. The school ratings. The recent sales. The property history. She walked through each house twice, noting every detail. When showing day came, Naomi was ready. The first house was wrong, too close to a busy street. The second was overpriced for the condition. But the third? The third was perfect. Naomi could see it in their faces when they walked in. The way they looked at each other. The way they started talking about where furniture would go. "I love it," the wife said. "But it's at the top of our budget." "Let me talk to the selling agent," Naomi said. "I think we can work something out." She negotiated for 2 days. Got the price down by $8,000. Negotiated for the seller to cover closing costs. By the time she was done, her clients were getting the house they loved at a price they could afford. The deal closed 3 weeks later. Naomi's commission was just over $3,000. $3,000 from one sale. She stood in Grace's office, holding the check, thinking about how many double shifts she'd have to work at the hospital to make that much money. "This is just the beginning," Grace said. "You're good at this, Naomi. You have the hunger. That's what separates the successful agents from the ones who wash out. That night, Naomi opened her laptop and did the math. If she could close one deal a month at that commission level, she'd make enough to quit her nursing job. If she could close 2 deals a month, she'd start building real savings. And once she had savings, she could start investing in properties herself. She opened her old bookmarks, the fix and flip listings she'd been stalking for months. The $50,000 house was gone. But there were others. A condo for $40,000. A duplex for $75,000. Soon, she told herself. Soon she'd have enough for a down payment. She fell asleep that night with her laptop still open, dreams of properties dancing in her head. Not dreams of getting Trevor back. Not dreams of proving something to Patricia. Dreams of building an empire on her own terms. 6 months after passing her licensing exam, Naomi sold her 10th property. Her commission checks were adding up. She'd saved $12,000, more money than she'd ever had at one time in her entire life. She lived like a monk. Her studio apartment cost $600 a month. She ate rice, beans, eggs, and whatever was on sale. She wore the same 3 professional outfits in rotation, washing them by hand to save on laundromat costs. Every penny that didn't go to survival went into her savings account. Grace had started giving her more leads. The other agents at Henderson Properties noticed Naomi's success rate and began sending overflow clients her way. She was building a reputation as someone who closed deals, who worked hard, who treated every client like they were her only client. "You remind me of myself 30 years ago," Grace told her one afternoon. "Hungry, driven. But Naomi, you can't just keep working for commissions forever. You need to think bigger." "I am thinking bigger." Naomi pulled out her laptop and showed Grace the spreadsheet she'd been building. "I've been analyzing properties. Fix and flips, rental opportunities. I found a condo 2-bedroom, 1 bath, needs cosmetic work. Listed at $42,000. I could get it for $38,000 with cash." Grace studied the numbers. "Your renovation budget?" $10,000. "New paint, updated fixtures, refinish the floors, modern hardware. I've gotten quotes from 3 contractors. I could have it done in 6 weeks and list it for $70,000. That's ambitious." "That's the plan." Grace looked at her for a long moment. "You need money for the down payment. Banks won't give you a mortgage with your credit history. Trevor wrecked that. So you'd need to pay cash. You don't have $38,000. Naomi's excitement dimmed. "Not yet. But I know someone who might lend it to you." Grace pulled out her phone. "His name is Frank. He's a private lender. The interest rates aren't pretty, but he'll take a chance on someone with a solid plan." 2 weeks later, Naomi stood inside the condo, keys in hand. Frank had lent her the money at 12% interest for 6 months. It was highway robbery, but it was also her shot. The place was a disaster. Stained carpet, yellowed walls, outdated light fixtures that looked like they came from the 70s. The kitchen cabinets were falling apart. The bathroom had pink tile that made Naomi think of those trash bags on the lawn. But she could see past all of it. She'd spent hours visualizing the transformation. Fresh white walls. Light wood floors. Modern brushed nickel fixtures. A kitchen with white cabinets and butcher block counters. A bathroom in classic white subway tile. She'd gone minimal on the budget but strategic on the choices. Everything she did added value without breaking the bank. Naomi spent every evening and weekend at the condo. She painted herself, working late into the night. She learned how to install cabinet hardware. She watched YouTube videos on how to caulk properly. She scrubbed and cleaned and transformed. The contractor handled the floors and the major plumbing work. Everything else, Naomi did herself. 6 weeks later, she stood in the finished condo and felt tears prick her eyes. It was beautiful. Simple, clean, modern. Exactly what she'd envisioned. She listed it for $72,000. It sold in 9 days for $70,000. After paying back Frank's loan with interest, the contractor, and other expenses, Naomi netted $18,000. $18,000 for 6 weeks of work. She'd never felt so powerful in her entire life. That same week, she ran into Trevor at a restaurant. She was meeting a client for lunch when she saw him across the room. He was with Sienna, who was visibly pregnant now. They were arguing in hushed voices, his face tight with stress, her expression petulant. Trevor looked up and their eyes met. Naomi saw him take in her appearance. She was wearing a new professional outfit. She'd finally allowed herself to buy nice clothes. Her hair was styled. She looked healthy, confident, successful. She watched recognition and surprise flicker across his face, followed by something that might have been regret. Naomi simply nodded once and turned back to her client. She didn't need to speak to Trevor. She didn't need his validation or his regret or his excuses. She needed nothing from him at all. When her client mentioned seeing them, Naomi just smiled. Old history, she said. Not relevant anymore. And she meant it. That evening, Naomi found a new property. A small house this time listed at $55,000. It needed more work than the condo, but the profit potential was higher. She could buy it, flip it, and net $30,000 if she played it right. She called Frank. I have another opportunity. This time the conversation was different. Frank had heard about her successful flip. Other investors were talking. She'd proven herself. I'll lend you $60,000 this time, Frank said. Same terms. But Naomi? You keep pulling this off and we should talk about a partnership. I've got more money than time. You've got more time than money. We could do something interesting together. Naomi bought the house. This time she hired more help. She'd learned that her time was valuable. She managed the renovation while still selling properties for Henderson. She was working 16-hour days, but they were her hours, building her future. The house sold for $92,000. Her net profit was $31,000. Added to her previous flip and her real estate commissions, Naomi now had over $60,000 in the bank. She was 29 years old, less than a year removed from sleeping in her car, and she had more money saved than she'd ever imagined possible. Grace called her into the office one afternoon. I'm getting old, Grace said without preamble. I've been thinking about retirement. And I've been watching you. You're not going to work for someone else forever. You're going to start your own company. Eventually, Naomi admitted. Why wait? I'll sell you Henderson Properties. You can pay me over time. Keep the name or change it. But the client list, the reputation, the office, it could be yours. Naomi's heart raced. How much? $80,000. I don't have that. You have 60. Pay me that as a down payment. Pay me the rest over the next 2 years. 5% interest. We'll draw up a contract. Naomi did the math in her head. It would take most of her savings. It was risky. What if the business didn't work out? What if she couldn't make the payments? But then she thought about sleeping in her car. About the pink trash bags. About Trevor's flat, emotionless voice telling her to leave. She'd already survived the worst. Everything else was just details. Let's do it, Naomi said. 1 week later, she owned her first business. She changed the name to Sterling Heights Properties, choosing words that spoke of value and aspiration. She kept the existing agents and promised them she'd grow the company. Give them more opportunities. Build something bigger together. She worked harder than she ever had before. She flipped properties while running the agency. She barely slept. She lived on coffee and determination. Her reputation grew. Clients sought her out specifically. Other agents wanted to work for her company. The local newspaper did a small feature on her. From homeless to homeowner to real estate owner in under a year. Naomi didn't mention Trevor in the interview. Didn't mention Patricia or Sienna. They weren't part of her story anymore. She was writing a new story now. One where she was the hero, not the victim. Late one night, working alone in her office, Naomi allowed herself to imagine 5 years in the future. What could she build in 5 years if she kept this pace? She pulled up a blank spreadsheet and started planning. The numbers she wrote down seemed impossible. Audacious. Crazy. But so had everything else she'd accomplished. She saved the file and titled it, Empire. 3 years passed like water flowing downhill, inevitable and powerful. Naomi stood in front of the window of her new office building, looking out at the city that had once rejected her. Sterling Heights Properties now occupied 3 floors of a downtown building. She had 22 agents working under her. Last year's revenue had topped $15 million. She was 32 years old and owned a company worth an estimated $30 million. The transformation hadn't been easy. There had been sleepless nights worrying about payroll. Deals that fell through at the last second. A lawsuit from a difficult client that cost her $60,000 to settle. A property flip that lost money when the market suddenly shifted. But for every setback, she'd had 3 victories. She'd developed a system. Buy distressed properties, renovate them strategically, sell them for profit. Use those profits to buy more properties. Eventually, she stopped selling some of them and started renting them instead. Passive income. The secret to real wealth. She now owned 12 rental properties. Each one generating steady monthly income. Each one increasing in value over time. She'd also hired a team. A property manager to handle the rentals. An acquisition specialist to find deals. A renovation crew that worked exclusively for her company. An accountant who managed the increasingly complex finances. Naomi had learned to delegate. to trust others, to focus her time on high-value activities rather than trying to do everything herself. She'd learned to dress the part too. Gone were the days of 3 outfits in rotation. She now wore tailored suits, carried a designer bag, drove a luxury car. Not because she cared about status symbols, but because perception mattered in business. Clients wanted to work with someone successful. Her apartment was no longer a tiny studio. She'd bought a condo not to flip but to live in. 2 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the city. The first home that was truly hers. On the wall of her home office, she'd hung a photograph of her grandmother standing in front of her apartment building. Next to it, she'd mounted one of the old property deeds. A reminder of where she came from. Of the legacy she was continuing. Naomi? The Martinez meeting is in 10 minutes. Her assistant, Rachel, appeared in the doorway. I'm ready. Naomi grabbed her portfolio and headed to the conference room. The Martinez family wanted to buy a small apartment building. 8 units. It was exactly the kind of property Naomi had been looking for, but she'd decided to let it go to a family who would put in the work and build something. She'd make her commission and, more importantly, build goodwill in the community. That was another lesson she'd learned. Success wasn't just about accumulating wealth. It was about building relationships, earning respect, creating opportunities for others. After the meeting closed successfully, Naomi returned to her office to find Rachel looking uncomfortable. There's someone here to see you, Rachel said. He doesn't have an appointment. He said his name is Trevor. The name landed like a punch to the stomach. Naomi hadn't heard from Trevor in 3 years. Not since she'd seen him at that restaurant, arguing with pregnant Sienna. Tell him I'm not available. I did. He said he'd wait. He's been in the lobby for an hour. Naomi considered having security remove him. But part of her was curious. What could he possibly want after 3 years? Fine. Give me 5 minutes, then send him in. She used those 5 minutes to center herself. To remember who she was now. To remind herself that Trevor no longer had power over her. When he walked into her office, Naomi barely recognized him. He'd aged badly. Gray streaked his hair. Lines carved deep around his eyes and mouth. He'd lost weight but not in a healthy way. He looked worn down, beaten. Naomi. He stood awkwardly in front of her desk. I don't even know where to start. Then don't. She kept her voice professional, cool. What do you want, Trevor? I wanted to see you. To explain. There's nothing to explain. You made your choices. I made mine. We're done. I know. I saw the article about you in the paper. About your company. I couldn't believe it was the same person. It's not. Naomi met his eyes. I'm not the same person you threw away. That person was weak, dependent, small. I killed her when you left her on that lawn in the rain. Trevor flinched. I was wrong. About everything. Sienna left me a year after the baby was born. She found someone richer. My business failed. My mother's been sick, cancer. Everything fell apart. I'm sorry about your mother's illness, Naomi said, and meant it. Despite everything, she didn't wish Patricia actual harm. But the rest of it? That's not my concern. I know. I just thought you should know that you were right. That day when you drove away, you said I'd regret it. You were right. Naomi stood up, signaling the meeting was over. I didn't say that to predict your future, Trevor. I said it because I knew mine. I knew I was going to build something without you. Something you could never diminish or take credit for. And I did. Could we talk sometime? Get coffee? I'd like to hear about your journey. No. The word was firm, final. We're not friends. We're not anything. You're part of a past I've left behind. I wish you well, but I don't want you in my life in any capacity. Rachel will show you out. She pressed the button for her assistant before Trevor could respond. As he left, Naomi saw him glance back once, his expression full of regret and loss. She felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. Just nothing. He was irrelevant. After work, Naomi drove to a small house she just acquired. A young couple was in the process of buying their first home through her agency. She'd negotiated a great deal for them and she wanted to leave a welcome gift. She placed a basket of essentials on the front porch, cleaning supplies, basic tools, a handwritten note of congratulations. It was something she did for all her first-time buyers. A small gesture that meant everything to people taking that big step. As she drove home, her phone rang. Frank, her first investor. Naomi, I've got a proposition. There's a strip mall about to go into foreclosure. 22 units, mostly empty. The location is good, but it's been mismanaged. I think with the right vision, It could be worth 3 times what they're asking. How much? 2 million. Naomi whistled. That's a big jump. You're ready for it. I've been watching you work for 3 years. You never bite off more than you can chew, but you're not afraid of calculated risk either. I'll front 60% if you put up 40. We'll be partners. $2 million. 4 years ago, she'd been sleeping in her car. Now someone wanted her to invest $800,000 in a strip mall. Send me the information. Let me run the numbers. She spent the next week analyzing every aspect of the deal. The location, the tenant history, the revenue potential, the renovation costs, the market comps. She drove by the strip mall a dozen times, studying it from every angle. The buildings were tired, outdated. But the bones were good. With fresh paint, new signage, some strategic updates, she could attract better tenants. Maybe a coffee shop. A boutique gym. Local businesses looking for affordable retail space. She could see it. The potential. The transformation. Let's do it, she told Frank. They bought the strip mall. Naomi threw herself into the renovation with the same energy she'd brought to her first condo flip, but on a much larger scale. She hired architects, contractors, marketing specialists. She personally courted potential tenants, selling them on her vision. Within 8 months, the strip mall was 90% occupied. The revenue was triple what it had been. The property value had doubled. Naomi's 40% stake was now worth $2.4 million. She was building an empire, one property at a time. And she was just getting started. 5 years after sleeping in her car, Naomi stood on stage accepting an award as Real Estate Entrepreneur of the Year from the State Business Association. Sterling Heights Properties was now valued at $200 million. She had branches in 3 cities. 75 agents working under her. A property portfolio that included apartment buildings, commercial spaces, and a growing number of fix and flip projects. She'd been featured in national business magazines. Local news stations called her for commentary on the real estate market. She'd given a TEDx talk about resilience and rebuilding. Universities invited her to speak to their business students. Naomi had become exactly what she'd dreamed of when she was young, a successful real estate developer, a businesswoman, a force in her industry. She was 34 years old and controlled assets worth over $300 million. The transformation from that woman in the rain, clutching pink trash bags, seemed impossible. But it had been inevitable. Every choice, every sacrifice, every late night had built toward this moment. After the awards ceremony, Naomi stood in the lobby accepting congratulations from peers and competitors alike. A photographer from the Business Journal asked to take her picture next to the display of award winners. She smiled, posed, played the part. Naomi. She turned to see Grace, her former boss and mentor, making her way through the crowd. Grace, I didn't know you'd be here. I wouldn't miss it. Grace hugged her tightly. I'm so proud of you. Look at everything you've built. I learned from the best. No, Grace said firmly. You had it in you all along. I just gave you the space to discover it. They talked for a while, catching up. Grace had been traveling, enjoying retirement. She asked about the business, about Naomi's plans for the future. Bigger, Naomi said simply. I want to develop entire communities. Affordable housing mixed with market rate. Green spaces. Local businesses. Not just buildings but neighborhoods where people can actually live well. That's a beautiful vision. It's my grandmother's vision, really. She always said real estate wasn't just about making money. It was about creating homes where people could build lives. As Grace left, another person approached. A man late 30s with kind eyes and an easy smile. Miss Sterling? I'm Jordan Bennett. I'm an architect. I heard you talking about community development. I'd love to discuss a project I think you'd be interested in. They exchanged business cards. Naomi agreed to a meeting the following week. That meeting turned into several meetings. Jordan's vision aligned perfectly with hers: sustainable development, mixed-income communities, spaces designed for people rather than profit maximization. He showed her renderings of projects he'd designed but never seen built because developers only cared about squeezing maximum profit from minimum space. I want to work with someone who actually cares about creating good communities, Jordan said. That seems to be you. They began collaborating on a proposal for a 50-unit development. Affordable housing mixed with market-rate condos. Green spaces. Solar panels. Community gardens. Everything they both believed in. Working with Jordan was easy. He listened to her ideas, contributed his own, pushed back when necessary but always respectfully. He was talented, passionate, and genuinely good. After a few months, the professional relationship became personal. Coffee meetings turned into dinners. Business discussions turned into conversations about life, dreams, fears. I grew up poor, Jordan told her over dinner one night. My mom cleaned houses to put me through school. I became an architect because I wanted to design beautiful spaces for people like her. People who deserved beauty but couldn't afford it. I was literally homeless 5 years ago, Naomi said. She'd never told anyone outside her close circle. My husband threw me out. I slept in my car. Then I rebuilt. Jordan looked at her with new respect. That explains the fire I see in you. You're not just building businesses. You're proving something. I'm not proving anything to anyone, Naomi corrected. I'm just building what I was always meant to build. But she was proving something even if she didn't want to admit it. She was proving that Trevor had been wrong. That Patricia had been wrong. That everyone who'd dismissed her or underestimated her had been wrong. One evening, while working late at her office, Naomi received a social media message from Trevor. I saw your award. Congratulations. I always knew you were special. She stared at the message for a long moment, then blocked him without responding. He didn't get to rewrite history. He hadn't known she was special. He'd called her suffocating, boring, a burden. She didn't need his validation or his revised memory of their relationship. A week later, she received an email from an unfamiliar address. When she opened it, she found a message from Sienna, of all people. I saw your success and wanted to reach out. I know we didn't start on good terms, but I'm in a difficult situation. Trevor and I split years ago. I'm a single mother struggling to find stable housing. I wondered if you might have any affordable properties available, or if you could help me in any way. I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm desperate. Naomi read the email twice. Part of her felt satisfaction at learning Sienna was struggling, but a larger part just felt tired. She replied, I don't have any personal properties available, but I can refer you to several agencies that specialize in affordable housing placement for single parents. I've attached their contact information. I wish you the best. Professional. Helpful. But distant. She wasn't going to punish Sienna by denying her information that might help. But she also wasn't going to personally involve herself in the woman's life. They had no relationship and Naomi wanted to keep it that way. Jordan noticed her mood that evening. Everything okay? Just ghosts from the past trying to resurface. She shook her head. But they don't live here anymore. Good. He took her hand across the table. Because I'm really enjoying getting to know the you of right now. The you building this incredible empire. The you with this big vision for the future. Over the next few months, their relationship deepened. Jordan was everything Trevor hadn't been, supportive without being dependent, ambitious about his own work without being competitive with hers, proud of her success without trying to claim credit. He fit into her life naturally, easily. They worked together well. They pushed each other to think bigger. And when she occasionally woke from nightmares about pink trash bags and locked doors, he held her without asking questions she wasn't ready to answer. Business continued to grow. Naomi closed more deals, flipped more properties, expanded into new markets. The community development project with Jordan won approval. Construction would begin in 6 months. She was everywhere, on podcasts talking about entrepreneurship, at conferences discussing sustainable development, in boardrooms negotiating deals worth millions. And through it all, she never forgot that woman in the rain. She kept that memory close, sharp, painful. Because that memory reminded her why she built this empire in the first place. Not for revenge. Not to prove anything to Trevor or Patricia or anyone else. But to prove to herself that she could. That she was never the small, weak, worthless thing they'd made her feel like. She was powerful, capable, unstoppable. And she was just getting started. The email from her financial advisor landed in Naomi's inbox on a Tuesday morning. Subject line, interesting opportunity. She opened it while drinking her coffee, expecting another property listing or investment opportunity. Instead, she found something much more interesting. Naomi, a debt collection company, is offering to sell a portfolio of residential mortgage debts. Mostly distressed properties, foreclosures in progress. Among them is a property at 847 Maple Street. If I'm not mistaken, that's your former residence. The debt is owned by Trevor Stewart and Patricia Stewart. Current amount owed is $380,000 including arrears and penalties. The entire portfolio is selling for $1.2 million. Might be worth a look. Robert. Naomi set down her coffee cup very carefully. 847 Maple Street. The house she'd bled for. The house she'd been thrown out of in the rain. The house where Trevor and Sienna had played house while Naomi slept in her car. The house was in foreclosure. She opened her laptop and pulled up the property records. There it was. Multiple missed payments. Notices of default. The bank had initiated foreclosure proceedings 6 months ago. Trevor and Patricia were losing the house. Naomi sat back in her chair, processing this information. The universe had a strange sense of humor. She spent the day analyzing the debt portfolio. Besides Trevor's house, there were 15 other properties. Most were genuinely underwater, people who'd lost jobs or faced medical emergencies and couldn't recover. The kind of situations she genuinely sympathized with. But the portfolio also included the kind of predatory lending that made her angry. Balloon payments, variable rates that tripled, hidden fees. People had been set up to fail. She could buy the portfolio. Work out reasonable payment plans with most of the debtors. Help people save their homes. And as for Trevor and Patricia? That was a separate question. Naomi called Robert. I want to see the full details on every property in that portfolio. She spent a week doing due diligence. She met with several of the debtors personally, listening to their stories. A teacher who'd gotten cancer and burned through her savings on treatment. A veteran trying to raise 3 kids alone after his wife died. A young couple who'd been victimized by a predatory lender. For those people, Naomi developed plans. Reduced payment schedules. Modified terms. Paths back to stability. She wasn't going to punish people for being victimized by a broken system. But Trevor and Patricia? Their situation was different. She pulled up their payment history. They defaulted because Trevor's business had collapsed completely. The consulting firm he'd built, the one Naomi had funded with her nursing paychecks for years, had failed spectacularly. He'd lost major clients, made poor decisions, and ultimately filed for bankruptcy. Patricia had co-signed on the house, which meant she was equally liable for the debt. The 2 people who'd thrown Naomi away like trash, who'd told her she was worthless, were now about to lose everything. Naomi bought the debt portfolio for $1.1 million, negotiating down from the asking price. She immediately began working with the other 14 families, setting up reasonable payment plans, in some cases forgiving portions of debt. She wasn't in this to hurt people who were genuinely struggling. But for Trevor and Patricia, she made a different decision. She also discovered something else interesting. Trevor's business had operated out of a small retail space in a strip mall. A strip mall that had recently changed hands. A strip mall she now owned through her partnership with Frank. She called her property manager. What's the situation with that corner unit, the one with Stewart Consulting on the window? 3 months behind on rent. Previous owner let it slide, but the business appears to be closed. We've been trying to contact the tenant to formalize the eviction. Send them formal notice. 30 days to vacate or pay all arrears plus late fees. She wasn't doing anything wrong. This was business. You don't pay rent, you get evicted. You don't pay your mortgage, you lose your house. These were simply the consequences of Trevor's choices. Naomi went to view the strip mall property one afternoon. She stood outside the unit where Trevor's business had been, looking at the faded sign in the window, the dusty interior visible through the glass. This was where he'd built his dream while she worked nights at the hospital. This was what he'd told her was more important than her own ambitions. And now it was gone. She felt no satisfaction, no joy. Just a calm, quiet sense of balance being restored. That evening, Jordan found her staring out the window of her condo, lost in thought. "You're quiet tonight," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Just thinking about choices," she said. "About consequences. Want to talk about it?" She told him about the debt portfolio. About discovering Trevor's house was in foreclosure. About the strip mall. "What are you going to do?" Jordan asked. "What's right for the business? The same thing any lender would do. They've defaulted. They need to face the consequences. But nothing." She turned to face him. "There's no but. I'm not going to punish them beyond what the situation requires. I'm also not going to save them. They made their choices. Now they live with them." "That's fair," Jordan said. "Cold maybe. But fair. I'm not cold. I'm just done being the person who saves everyone else while sacrificing myself. Trevor needed me to fund his business? I did it. His mother needed me to prove my worth? I tried. Sienna needed somewhere to live? She took my home. Now they need mercy? They can find it somewhere else. What happens to them? They have 30 days to either pay their debts or vacate. Both the house and the business space. After that, it's out of their hands. The house will be auctioned. The business space will be rented to someone who actually pays rent. Naomi walked away from the window. And I'll continue building my company, developing communities, and living my life. They're not my responsibility. They never were. But that night, she lay awake thinking about it. Not because she felt guilty she didn't, but because she was waiting for some feeling that never came. She'd imagined this moment before, back in those early days when anger fueled her ambition. She'd imagined Trevor and Patricia desperate, begging, facing ruin. She'd thought she'd feel victorious, powerful, vindicated. Instead she just felt nothing. They were irrelevant. Their suffering didn't make her happy. Their desperation didn't fill any void. They simply didn't matter. And that, she realized, was the real victory. Not destroying them, but reaching a place where their fate meant nothing to her. The 30-day notices went out. Naomi signed them herself, her signature neat and businesslike on the legal documents that would change Trevor and Patricia's lives forever. Then she filed them away and went back to work building her empire. She had communities to develop, families to help house, a future to build. The past could take care of itself. The conference room at Sterling Heights Properties fell silent as Naomi's attorney laid out the documents. You now legally own all outstanding debt related to 847 Maple Street, he confirmed. You also own the property lease for the commercial unit at Riverside Strip Mall. You have the legal right to proceed with foreclosure on the residence and eviction from the commercial space. Naomi nodded, studying the papers. In black and white there it was. She held Trevor and Patricia's future in her hands. Her assistant Rachel knocked on the door. Naomi? You have a call holding. He says his name is Trevor Stewart and it's urgent. Take a message. He's called 4 times today. He says it's about the foreclosure notice. Naomi looked at her attorney, who shrugged. You don't have to talk to him. Everything can go through lawyers. No, Naomi said after a moment. Put him through. She picked up the phone in the conference room, putting it on speaker so her attorney could hear. Naomi. Trevor's voice came through, strained and desperate. Thank God. I've been trying to reach you for days. I'm a busy person. What do you need? The foreclosure notice. It says the debt has been sold to Sterling Heights Properties. That's your company. Yes. Pause. You bought my mortgage? I bought a portfolio of debt. Your mortgage happened to be included. Naomi, please. We need to work something out. My mother and I, we're facing eviction from both the house and my office space. We have nowhere to go. That's unfortunate. Unfortunate? His voice rose. Naomi, this is our lives. The house my mother has lived in for 30 years. The business I've spent years building. The business that failed, Naomi corrected. And the house you defaulted on. These are consequences of your choices, Trevor. Not my problem. How can you be so cold? After everything you did, Naomi interrupted. Let's be very clear. You threw me out of that house in the rain. Your mother told me I was worthless. You left me with nothing while you and your mistress played house in the home I'd helped pay for. Don't talk to me about cold. She heard him take a shaky breath. I was wrong. I've admitted that. But this is revenge. This is you punishing me. No, Naomi said calmly. Punishment would be personal. This is business. You defaulted on your debts. I now hold those debts. The process moves forward according to the law. There's nothing personal about it. There has to be something we can do. Some payment plan. I'm trying to restart the business, I just need time. You've had time. You've had multiple extensions from the previous lender. You've had warnings. You've had opportunities to work out arrangements. And you've failed to meet every single commitment. Why would I expect anything different? Because you're not heartless. I know you, Naomi. You're kind. You help people. I help people who haven't spent years treating me like garbage. I help people who deserve help. You don't fall into that category. Her attorney slid a note across the table. You're not obligated to negotiate. Naomi nodded and continued. The 30-day notice stands. After that, if you haven't vacated both properties, I'll proceed with formal eviction. I'm not trying to destroy you, Trevor. But I'm also not going to save you. Please. Now he was begging, his voice breaking. My mother is sick. She's still recovering from cancer treatment. We have nowhere to go. Then I suggest you start looking for housing assistance. There are programs for people in your situation. Programs? You want me to apply for charity? To go to a shelter? I did, Naomi said quietly. When you threw me out, I spent time in a shelter. I slept in my car. I ate from food banks. I survived. So can you. The line went quiet for a long moment. "I can't believe you've become this person," Trevor finally said. "So bitter, so vindictive." "I'm not bitter. I'm successful. I'm not vindictive. I'm simply not your safety net anymore. You wanted me gone from your life? Congratulations. You got exactly what you asked for." She hung up before he could respond. Her attorney looked impressed. That was direct. It needed to be. Naomi gathered the papers. "Proceed with everything according to standard protocol. No special treatment. No extensions. Just process it like any other foreclosure." Over the next 2 weeks, Naomi heard nothing from Trevor. But she did receive a letter from Patricia. She almost threw it away unopened. But curiosity won. The letter was handwritten, Patricia's normally perfect penmanship shaky. "Dear Naomi, I am writing to appeal to whatever kindness remains in your heart. I know I treated you poorly during your marriage to my son. I am ashamed of my behavior. I was wrong to judge you, to dismiss you, to participate in removing you from our lives. I am 68 years old. I am recovering from cancer. I have nowhere else to go if we lose the house. Trevor is trying, but his business failed. We are desperate. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to show mercy. Please consider allowing us more time to find alternative housing. Please consider modifying the debt terms so we might keep the house. I understand if you refuse. I understand that we do not deserve your help. But I am asking anyway from one woman to another. Patricia." Naomi read the letter twice. She looked for the trap, the manipulation, the angle. But it seemed genuine. Patricia sounded truly desperate. She set the letter aside and called her attorney. "The foreclosure on 847 Maple Street. What happens if they don't vacate? Sheriff's Department removes them. Their belongings are placed on the curb. Standard procedure. On the curb. Like pink trash bags in the rain." Naomi thought about it for a long time. She could show mercy. Could give them extra time. Could modify the terms of the debt. But why should she? They'd shown her no mercy. No compassion. No kindness. Jordan found her reading the letter that evening. That from them? Patricia. Begging for mercy. "What are you going to do?" "What I should do. Let the process continue." "You sure? Are you saying I should help them?" Naomi looked at him sharply. "I'm saying you should do whatever lets you sleep at night. If letting the foreclosure proceed feels right, do that. If showing some mercy feels right, do that. But don't make the decision based on what they deserve. Make it based on who you want to be. I want to be someone who doesn't get taken advantage of anymore. That's not who you're choosing to be. That's who you're choosing not to be. Those are different things." Naomi put the letter in her desk drawer. "I'll think about it." But she didn't really need to think. She knew what she was going to do. Nothing. She wasn't going to help them. But she also wasn't going to go out of her way to hurt them. She was simply going to let the legal process unfold. They'd defaulted. They'd had chances to fix it. Now they faced consequences. That wasn't revenge. That was just reality. The 30-day period ended. Neither property was vacated. Naomi's attorney filed the necessary paperwork for forced eviction. The sheriff scheduled the eviction for a Tuesday morning. Naomi didn't attend. She didn't need to see it. Didn't want to see it, actually. She spent that Tuesday morning at a site visit for the community development project with Jordan. They walked through the partially constructed buildings, discussing design elements, checking progress. Her phone rang multiple times. She didn't answer. Later, Rachel forwarded her a message from Trevor. "You've won. Are you happy now? My mother is in the hospital. The stress of the eviction caused her to have a heart episode. I hope destroying us was worth it." Naomi felt a flicker of concern about Patricia's health, but she didn't call back. She didn't send flowers. She didn't engage. Because engaging meant giving them power over her emotions again. And she was done with that. Jordan read the message over her shoulder. "You okay?" "I'm fine. Patricia's health issues aren't my responsibility or my fault. She's getting the medical care she needs. Beyond that, there's nothing I can or should do. You're really okay with all of this?" "I'm really okay with protecting my peace," Naomi said firmly. "I'm okay with not being manipulated by guilt. I'm okay with Trevor and Patricia facing the consequences of their choices. And yes, I'm okay with not saving people who threw me away when they were done using me." She turned off her phone and focused on the building in front of her. This was her future. Affordable housing for families who needed it. Community spaces for people to gather. Green areas for children to play. This was what mattered. Not Trevor. Not Patricia. Not the past. The present. The future. The empire she was building, one property, one community, one choice at a time. That evening, she and Jordan had dinner at her favorite restaurant. Over wine and pasta, they talked about their upcoming projects, about the foundation she was planning to start, about his latest architectural designs. They talked about everything except Trevor and Patricia, because they simply didn't matter anymore. Naomi's receptionist called her office line on a Thursday afternoon. "There are 2 people here to see you. No appointment. They say it's urgent." Names are Trevor Stewart and Patricia Stewart. Naomi paused in reviewing contracts. After the eviction 2 weeks ago, she'd expected never to hear from them again. The house had been sold at auction. The commercial space re-rented. She'd assumed they'd moved on. "Tell them I'm not available. They say they won't leave until they speak with you. Security is asking if they should call the police." Naomi considered. She could have them escorted out. Could call the police herself. Could avoid this confrontation entirely. But another part of her wanted this over. Wanted the final word. Wanted to close this chapter once and for all. "Give me 10 minutes. Then send them to conference room B." She used those 10 minutes to center herself. To remember who she was now. To prepare for whatever manipulation, guilt-tripping, or rage they might bring. When she walked into the conference room, she found them waiting. Patricia looked older, thinner, worn down by illness and stress. Trevor looked defeated, his shoulders slumped, his eyes hollow. They were nothing like the powerful, dismissive people who'd stood on that porch 6 years ago and told her she was worthless. "You have 5 minutes, Naomi said, remaining standing. She wouldn't sit. Wouldn't get comfortable. This wasn't a conversation. This was an ending. Patricia spoke first, her voice weak. "Thank you for seeing us. I didn't do it for you. I did it so security didn't have to remove you. Say what you came to say." Trevor stood up. "We came to beg. We have nowhere to go. The house is gone. My business is gone. My mother is sick and can't work. I can't find employment because my reputation in the business community is ruined. We're staying in a motel, but our money is running out. We'll be homeless in a week. And you want what from me exactly?" "Help," Patricia said, her voice breaking. "Any kind of help. Maybe a loan. Or a job. Or advice on where to go, what to do. We're desperate, Naomi." Naomi looked at them for a long moment. "You threw me out with nothing. Your exact words, Patricia, were that I was garbage. That your son deserved better. Do you remember that?" Patricia looked down. "I remember. Trevor, you told me I was suffocating. Boring. That your mistress made you happy in ways I never could. You took everything I'd worked for and gave it to her. Do you remember?" "I remember," he whispered. "Good. Because I want you to understand something very clearly. What you're feeling right now, this desperation, this fear, this sense of having nowhere to turn, this is exactly what you did to me. This is what I survived. And I did it without anyone's help." "We're sorry," Trevor said. "We've said we're sorry. What more do you want?" "I don't want anything from you. That's the point. I don't want your apologies. I don't want to help you. I don't want you in my life in any capacity. So you're just going to let us become homeless? You have more money than you could ever spend. Would it really hurt you to help us?" "Yes," Naomi said firmly. "It would hurt me to help the people who destroyed me. It would hurt me to teach you that you can treat people like garbage and still get saved when you need it. It would hurt me to enable your continued refusal to take responsibility for your own lives." Patricia started crying quietly. "Please. I'm begging you." "My grandmother used to tell me something," Naomi said, her voice cold but calm. "She said you teach people how to treat you. I taught you that you could use me, discard me, and I'd keep giving. I was wrong to teach you that. I'm not making that mistake again. What are we supposed to do?" Trevor's voice rose, anger creeping in. "Just live on the streets? There are shelters, food banks, job placement programs, government assistance. The same resources I used when you threw me out. Use them." "This is revenge," Patricia said. "Pure revenge. You're punishing us." "No," Naomi corrected. "Punishment would be active. I would have to do something to you. I'm not doing anything. I'm simply refusing to save you from yourselves. There's a difference." She walked to the door, then paused. "You know what the ironic thing is? If you divorced me respectfully, split things fairly, treated me with basic human decency, I probably would help you now. Because that's who I am. I help people who deserve help. But you didn't just leave me. You humiliated me. You threw me away like trash. You celebrated my suffering." "We were wrong," Trevor said again. "Being wrong isn't enough. You don't get forgiveness just because you finally realized you were awful. You get consequences. And these are yours. So that's it. Patricia's tears had stopped, replaced by a hard expression. You're just going to let us suffer? I'm going to let you figure out your own lives the way I had to figure out mine. Alone. You're cold, Patricia spat. Trevor was right about you. You're heartless. Naomi smiled, but there was no warmth in it. No. I'm free. Free from caring what you think. Free from needing your approval. Free from the version of myself that would have set herself on fire to keep you warm. That woman is dead. You killed her. And I'm better for it. She opened the door. Your 5 minutes are up. Don't contact me again. Don't come to my office. Don't reach out through intermediaries. We're done. Forever. You'll regret this, Trevor said. No. I really won't. Naomi looked at him one last time. I regret a lot of things. The years I wasted on you. The dreams I deferred for your dreams. The way I let you and your mother make me feel small. But this? Letting you go? Watching you face the consequences of your own choices? I don't regret this at all. She called for security. 2 guards appeared immediately. Please escort these people from the building. They're not welcome here. If they return, call the police for trespassing. As they were walked out, Patricia looked back once. Her face was a mixture of rage, desperation, and something that might have been regret. Naomi felt nothing. No satisfaction. No guilt. No anger. Just a profound sense of closure. She returned to her office and sat at her desk, looking out at the city she'd conquered. 6 years ago she'd had nothing. Now she had everything. And she'd built it without them, despite them, because of them. Rachel buzzed her line. Are you okay? Do you need anything? I'm perfect, Naomi said. And meant it. That evening, Jordan found her at home, sitting on her balcony with a glass of wine, watching the sunset. I heard they came to the office. They did. And I told them the truth. That they're not my responsibility. That I won't save them. That we're done. Jordan sat beside her, taking her hand. How do you feel? Honestly? I feel nothing. They're strangers to me now. Unpleasant strangers I used to know. No guilt. None. I gave them what they gave me, nothing. That's not revenge. That's balance. Jordan kissed her hand. I'm proud of you. Not for refusing to help them, but for being clear about your boundaries. For protecting your peace. Naomi leaned against him, watching the light fade from the sky. In the distance, the city glittered with possibility. Her city now. The place where she'd rebuilt herself from nothing into something powerful. Somewhere out there, Trevor and Patricia were facing an uncertain future. A future they'd created through their own choices. And Naomi was here, in the home she'd bought with money she'd earned, beside a man who loved her for who she truly was, building an empire that would outlast any of them. The confrontation was over. The past was finally fully buried. Tomorrow she had communities to build. Tonight she had peace. The banner across the community center read, Grand Opening Sterling Heights Village. Naomi stood before 200 people, residents, investors, city council members, reporters, and felt a sense of completion she'd never experienced before. The community development project was finished. 50 units of housing, half affordable and half market rate. A community center with free programs for residents. A playground. Community gardens. Solar panels on every roof. Local businesses in ground floor retail spaces. It was everything she dreamed of when she was young. Everything her grandmother had believed real estate could be. And she'd built it. Her vision, her funding, Jordan's design. This isn't just a housing development, Naomi said into the microphone. It's a promise. A promise that safe, beautiful, sustainable housing should be accessible to everyone. That communities thrive when we build them with intention and care. That profit and purpose can coexist. The audience applauded. Cameras flashed. She'd done dozens of these speeches now, but this one felt different. Special. This wasn't about her success. This was about the 25 families who would move into affordable homes next week. The children who would play in the park. The seniors who would attend programs at the community center. After the ceremony, Jordan found her standing alone in the community garden, looking at the raised beds ready for planting. Proud of yourself? He asked. Proud of us, she corrected. You designed this beautiful space. But you made it possible. He took both her hands. Naomi Sterling, 6 years ago you were sleeping in your car. Today you just opened a 50-unit community development. Tomorrow, what's tomorrow going to bring? Tomorrow I announced the Sterling Foundation. We're dedicating $10 million to help women rebuild after divorce. Housing assistance, job training, small business loans. Everything I needed when I was starting over. That's incredible. It's necessary. Naomi looked at the building behind them. I got lucky. I had skills, timing, opportunities. Not everyone does. The foundation will give other women those opportunities. Jordan pulled a small box from his pocket. Speaking of tomorrow? Naomi's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a simple, elegant ring. I'm not Trevor, Jordan said. I'll never be Trevor. I'll never make you smaller so I can feel bigger. I'll never take credit for your success. I'll never make you choose between your dreams and our relationship. I see you, Naomi. All of you. And I want to build a life with you where we both keep growing. Yes, she said before he could finish. Yes. They stood together in the garden, holding each other as the sun set over the community they'd built together. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Patricia Stewart left a letter at the front desk. Should I send it up? Naomi looked at Jordan, who raised his eyebrows in question. It's from Patricia, she said. Another letter. Are you going to read it? Naomi thought about it. Then she texted back. No. Throw it away. She didn't need to know what Patricia wanted. Didn't need to open that door again, even a crack. That chapter was closed. Over. Done. I'm free of them, she said out loud, realizing it was completely true. They can't hurt me. They can't make me feel guilty. They can't steal my peace. They're just nothing. The next 6 months moved fast. The foundation launched with a press conference that went national. Naomi appeared on morning shows, in business magazines, on podcasts. She told her story, not as revenge but as inspiration. She never mentioned Trevor or Patricia by name. They weren't villains in her story. They were just obstacles she'd overcome. Sterling Heights Properties reached a valuation of $600 million. Naomi's personal net worth crossed $100 million. She owned 25 residential properties for commercial developments and had 3 more community projects in development. She was 35 years old and more successful than she'd ever imagined possible. Jordan moved in with her. They talked about wedding plans, about building a house together, about the future. He was designing their dream home, sustainable, beautiful, filled with light. One evening, while working late at her office, Naomi received an email notification. The house at 847 Maple Street had been purchased at auction 6 months ago. The new owner had completely renovated it and just listed it for sale. Curious, Naomi clicked through to see the listing. The house was unrecognizable. Fresh paint, new landscaping, updated everything. It looked beautiful, like a different house entirely. But she felt nothing looking at it. No pain, no anger, no longing. It was just a house. One of millions. No longer connected to her story. She closed the listing and went back to work on the proposal for her next community development project. A week later, Rachel knocked on her office door. There's a woman here. Says her name is Patricia Stewart. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's asking to see you. She says it's not about money or help. She just wants 5 minutes. Naomi almost said no. Almost had her escorted out. But something made her pause. 5 minutes, she told Rachel. In the lobby. Not in my office. She took the elevator down and found Patricia sitting in one of the modern leather chairs, looking older and more frail than before. She wore clean but dated clothes. Her hands shook slightly. Thank you for seeing me, Patricia said, standing. I'm very busy. What do you want? Nothing. That's the truth. I don't want money or help or anything from you. Patricia's voice was steadier than Naomi expected. I wanted to tell you that Trevor and I are okay. We found an apartment through government assistance. I'm collecting Social Security. Trevor got a job managing a storage facility. It's not glamorous, but we're surviving. Why are you telling me this? Because I wanted you to know that I'm not blaming you anymore. You were right. About everything. We made our choices. We treated you horribly. And we had to face the consequences. That's fair. Naomi crossed her arms. Okay. I also wanted to say. Patricia paused, seeming to gather courage. I was wrong about you. When Trevor brought you home, I thought you weren't good enough for my son. I thought you were common, ordinary, beneath our standards. I was a fool. You were always extraordinary. I just couldn't see it. Is this supposed to make me feel better? No. It's supposed to make me feel like maybe I can move forward with a little less shame. Patricia picked up her purse. I won't bother you again. I just needed to say it. You deserved better from us. And I'm sorry we couldn't give it to you. She walked toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm glad you built all of this. I'm glad you survived what we did to you. You earned every bit of your success. Then she was gone. Naomi stood in the lobby for a moment, processing. Then she went back to her office and didn't think about it again. 3 months later, Naomi and Jordan got married in a small ceremony at Sterling Heights Village. Just close friends, family, and a few residents from the community. Simple, beautiful, meaningful. No drama. No pain. No past shadows intruding on the present. Just love and hope and future. Standing with Jordan, saying her vows, Naomi thought about that woman in the rain 6 years ago. The woman clutching pink trash bags. The woman who'd felt like her life was over. If she could talk to that version of herself, she'd tell her, "This isn't the end. This is the beginning. You're about to become someone you can't even imagine yet. Someone stronger, wiser, more powerful. Someone who builds empires. The pain you're feeling right now? It's fuel. Use it. Let it transform you. But don't let it consume you. And when you finally make it, and you will make it, don't look back with revenge in your heart. Look back with gratitude. Because they freed you. They broke you open so you could rebuild yourself into something extraordinary." At the reception, Naomi gave a toast. To new beginnings. To second chances. To the courage to rebuild. And to the wisdom to know that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's living a beautiful life they never imagined you could have. Everyone raised their glasses. Later that night, as she and Jordan drove away toward their honeymoon, Naomi looked back one last time at the community she'd built. Lights glowed in the windows. Families were home, safe, building lives in spaces she'd created. This was her legacy. Not the money or the success or the revenge. The lives she'd touched. The communities she'd built. The women she'd helped through her foundation. This was who she'd become. Not in spite of what Trevor and Patricia did to her. But because of it. And that, finally, was enough.